Don't forget, you can reach the latest episode of Potomac Watch anytime. Just ask your smart speaker, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back. On Friday, the House of Representatives voted to expel Congressman George Santos. He is under 23 federal criminal counts of indictment, including for fraud, money laundering, falsifying records, and aggravated identity theft. But he's pleaded not guilty to those charges, and they've not come to trial yet. And expulsions are pretty rare in the House. According to the Washington Post, there have been 5 of them in American history, 3 in 1861. There were lawmakers who were expelled for fighting for the Confederacy. And then in 1980, after a congressman was convicted of bribery, and again in 2002, after another conviction for racketeering, bribery, and fraud. And Bill, the threshold here is high. It has to be a 2/3 requirement in order to get the expulsion across the line. But the vote for Santos met that pretty easily, it seems, 311 to 114. But notably, some important Republicans voting no, including Speaker Mike Johnson, House Majority Leader Steve Scalise, and New York's Elise Stefanik. So, Bill, what do you make of this argument within the House?
Well, I would have voted with the Speaker on this. There's a couple things. First of all, what George Santos did, no one can defend him. It's indefensible. He made up all these lies about himself. You don't know what he's telling the truth about. It was so completely over the top. I can understand people want to get rid of him. But to kick someone out of the House who's been elected, it does trouble me. There's a mechanism, so that's fair enough to do it. But I think we ought to tread lightly on substituting the votes of Congress for the votes of the people to choose them. And it leaves me with a very uneasy feeling. Also, as bad as Santos was, look at some of these people. They didn't kick Eric Swalwell off the Intelligence Committee when he's sleeping with a Chinese spy. And Menendez, a trial in New Jersey, there are a lot of things that seem very egregious to me. And if it was equal opportunity, if the House were saying, we have a higher standard and we're going to uphold it, maybe I'd be more inclined to give them the benefit of the doubt, but I'm very skeptical.
Well, I grant that the House has a difficulty with characters who are particularly shameless, because in the old days, somebody indicted and under the kind of accusations that Santos faces probably would have done the right thing and resigned, but he has refused. On the other hand, I take the point that Bill makes, which is that once you start down this road, we're already in a political environment of increasing polarization and tit for tat, and you start to wonder where this is exactly taking us. And I'll throw to a clip here. This is Senator John Fetterman talking about New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez on Friday on The View.
The more important picture is that we have a colleague in the Senate that actually did much more sinister and serious kinds of things. Senator Menendez, he needs to go. And if you are going to expel Santos, how can you allow to somebody like Menendez to remain in the Senate? And, you know, Santos's kind of lies were almost, funny. And like, he, landed on the moon and that kind of stuff. Whereas, I think, Menendez, I think, is really a senator for Egypt, not New Jersey.
Alicia, I think the question is, what distinctions are they going to draw now that they have broken the seal of expelling somebody who has not been convicted of anything, who still has due process in front of them? It seems to me that every big ethics investigation now is going to be accompanied by a debate over whether to kick that person out of Congress instead of leaving it to the voters. And remember, as we sit here today, we're only 11 months or so from the 2024 election. So it's not like George Santos was going to have a long political career ahead of him anyway.
I think that's right. And if you recall the Menendez indictment, the details are really astonishing, where he was basically found gold bars in his home, his suits, safe boxes. He had also taken, or his girlfriend, now wife, had accepted bribes in the form of luxury vehicles. and basically for influence peddling, for trying to convince or persuade his Senate colleagues to support aid for Egypt, which was John Fetterman's point that he was essentially acting as a senator for Egypt, not New Jersey. There's some truth to that. No, I think that the term that comes to mind when you're talking about, well, where does this go? It's what is the limiting principle? Like we like to say when discussing the Supreme Court and court decisions and court cases, what is the limiting principle? And it is, okay, if what George Santos did deserves expulsion, well, what about those allegations of insider trading, sexual harassment? There are a lot of things that members have done or have been accused of doing that, similarly could be argued are grounds for expulsion. And where do you draw the line? I think that there's going to be problems. I mean, the nice thing about a conviction is that is a clear line. If somebody has been convicted, okay, well, maybe that deserves being booted, though I would probably say it deserves to be left up to voters. But here, there really is no clear line. And I think when we have discussed in the past about tit for tat with the filibuster and basically blowing up the filibuster for federal court nominees or such, and that eventually led to Republicans doing away for the Supreme Court. Again, that's basically what you're going to see happen here. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's Republicans try to rally behind expelling, a Democrat for some offense too. That's just going to become more partisan warfare.
Thank you, Alicia and Bill. Thank you all for listening. You can email us at pwpodcast@wsj.com. If you like the show, please hit that subscribe button, and we'll be back next week with another edition of Potomac Watch.